She wore her heart on her sleeve from the moment the world first saw her, to the moment it tragically lost her. And in Sinead O'Connor's last interview, she was just as honest, vulnerable and unflinching as ever. Sky documentary Nothing Compares, which airs on Saturday, was to be a unique, intimate portrait of a living legend, but will now be a homage to a remarkable life gone too soon. Yesterday it emerged that the Irish songstress had been found unresponsive at her home in London on Wednesday morning, where she was pronounced dead at the scene. She had only recently returned to live in the city after a 23-year absence, and told fans that she was very happy to be home. As well as the documentary, she had also been finishing an album that was to be released early next year, and was planning a world tour. It was because of her music that we knew her, but Sinead always insisted it was her music that saved her, both from the traumas of her past and the knocks that she took along the way. And the last thing she was after, according to the singer, was fame. There was no therapy when I was growing up, so the reason I got into music was therapy, she said. Which is why it was such a shock for me to become a pop star. It's not what I wanted. I just wanted to scream. Sinead would later reveal how she was abused by her violent mother Maria until her father John won custody when she was 10. The traumatized young girl was later sent to a correctional school after she began to play truant from school to shoplift, where she first started expressing her pain through music. Everybody in music has a story in terms of their upbringing, or where they came from or what they went through, the singer said. You know, there is something they need to get off their chest, and perhaps we all need a bit of love and affection that we didn't get anywhere else, but we get by making music. Music was a part of her life right from the beginning though, and in her last interview Sinead remembered the heartbreaking way she had learned the power of her angelic voice. My first musical memory is my father singing to me Scarlet Ribbons. I just remember being blown away. I remember like yesterday lying on my pillow and my dad singing this song to me. I was like, oh my God. The angels came in the window. My mother was a very violent woman, not a healthy woman. She was physically, verbally, psychologically, spiritually and emotionally abusive. My mother was a beast. And I was able to soothe her with my voice. I was able to use my voice to make the devil fall asleep. Sinead remembered how music came to her rescue again during the 18 months she spent at the church-run Crianan Training Centre. After being encouraged by a sympathetic nun to take up guitar, she began to express her pain through songs. She recalled, the first song that I wrote was called Take My Hand. It was a result of a punishment the nun meted out to me one day. The nun could be terribly kind, but she could also be terribly cruel as well. When I was attached to a Magdalene laundry, she sent me to sleep in the hospice part of the laundry as punishment to remind me that if I didn't behave myself, I was going to end up like these women. There were no nuns and the poor ancient women were lying on their beds calling out for nurses all night that never came. It was awful. I didn't know what to do, and obviously I was terrified. Her experience of how cruelly the church treated women would stay with Sinead for the rest of her life, and hardened her resolve to never compromise her beliefs or conform to what others expected of her. She remembers how, after being signed by record company Jensen, executives demanded she fit the mold of what they believed was a commercially successful female artist. They wanted me to grow the hair long and wear short skirts and high heels and makeup and the whole works. Write songs that wouldn't challenge anything. But then I come from a country where there used to be riots in the streets over plays. That's what art is for, she said. I came from a patriarchal country where I'm being told everything I can and don't do because I'm a girl. And I figured, well, if I didn't take it from the system, and I didn't take it from my daddy, I ain't taking it from anybody else. It was the moment Sinead, who until then had short hair, decided to shave her head completely, while she increasingly used her songs to channel her anger and trauma from the past. They included her debut single Joy, from her first album The Lion and the Cobra in 1987, in which she remembered a cruel punishment meted out by her mother, who had died 3 years earlier in a car accident. Sinead remembered, "It was the first song where I'm telling anybody about anything that happened. One of the very traumatic things that happened to me growing up was that my mother had me living in the garden. When I was 8.5, I lived in the garden 24/7 for a week or two. I'm talking in that song about that experience. I'm out in the garden in the effing dark, and when it's coming to dusk, I still hate dusk to this day. And I'd be looking up at the only window at the side of the house where she'd have a light on, and I'd be screaming, begging her to let me in. And she wouldn't let me in. The light would go off. The house go dark." She described the song as like trauma therapy and explained why she stopped performing it. "It's not a song, it's a effing testament. Troy is not safe. I don't need to dig that up again. There would have been no point writing and or going around the world screaming Troy into microphones if there wasn't going to come a day, one day that I didn't need to do that anymore." Her mother was also the focus of her most famous song, the breathtaking cover of Prince's Nothing Compares to You, along with the iconic video in which she cries as she sings. She revealed, "I didn't know I was going to cry singing it. I didn't cry in the studio. It was just because there was a big eye on me in the form of a camera. Every time I sing the song, I think of my mother. I never stopped crying for my mother for, Jesus. I couldn't face being in Ireland for 13 years. It took me, I would say, 25 years to stop crying. So yeah, I was thinking of her. And I suppose my subconscious was thinking of that little girl that sat in the garden." She added, "I think it's funny that the world fell in love with me because of crying and a tear. I went and did a lot of crying and everybody was like, oh you crazy BTCH. But actually, hold on, you fell in love with that tear, that was a mirror." Her reputation at sticking two fingers up to convention won her admirers, but also detractors. Sinead said she understood why. The Irish effing constitution still contains the wording that a woman's place is in the home. So I was very lucky. From 1985 I was making my own living. So many people in this country, women in particular, had to say no, when they wanted to say yes, to themselves. Life can be very difficult for you, because people can't actually handle a woman doing anything different. At that time in Ireland, women weren't allowed to be angry. And I think that might have been hard for some of them, because they had spent their whole life saying no to themselves. The vitriol was at its worst after the singer tore up a photo of the Pope during her 1992 appearance on U.S. chat show Saturday Night Live. The global backlash effectively ended her career. 2 weeks later, She was greeted with loud booing as she walked on stage to performing a Bob Dylan tribute concert at Madison Square Garden. She ended up abandoning her planned song to instead scream over the audition a shouted rendition of War, stopping at a mention about child abuse to emphasize the reason for her protest against the Catholic Church. Sinead remembered, "This song was to be sung in a whisper and I knew that I couldn't because I wouldn't be heard. I would have been drowned out, I couldn't have that. Are you going to stand by me?" was almost what I felt God was saying to me. Are you going to effing stand by me or are you going to pussy out of here and walk off stage? It wasn't until 8 years later that she was vindicated when Pope Benedict XVI apologized to the victims of child abuse in Ireland. But by the time the singer had been shunned by the music world and dismissed by many as crazy. Far from regretting taking the controversial stand, Sinead said she was proud of what she did. She said, "I regret that people treated me like shit. And I regret that I was so wounded already that really killed me and hurt me. They all thought that I should be made a mockery of for throwing my career down the drain. I never set out to be a pop star. It didn't suit me being a pop star. So I didn't throw away any effing career that I wanted. It didn't change my attitude. I wasn't sorry. I didn't regret it. It was the proudest thing I've ever done, as an artist. They broke my heart and they killed me. But I didn't die. They tried to bury me. They didn't realize I was a seed." Sinead O'Connor, "Nothing Compared to You," on Sky Documentaries and now from July 29.
Now take